today's show today. If you're just now signing in, nothing is wrong with your computer. I am the guest host on Live with Noelle. I'm very excited to be here. I'm hosting Noelle along with Kristina, and this is the first part of our show. We have a second part of our show as well, where we're going to have Denise come on. So I'm excited about today's show. We're talking about the first cohort, historic cohort of the nurse retention program designed for leaders. So welcome to your own show, Noelle Kohles.
Thank you.
All righty. And
I appreciate you having me on my own show.
Hey, what can I say? I try. And then we also have Miss Kristina Rolfes. Thank you very much for being here today.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here.
Yes. And I told Kristina when she came on, I already felt safer because her Zoom says quality assurance when she first comes on. It does say Kristina now, but she is a quality assurance person at her organization.
Yes,
so,
part of the team. Mm-hmm.
Part of the team. Yes, part of the quality assurance team.
Yes, it's never just one.
Exactly. Yes. Okay, so I'm actually a little bit excited to hear about what your feedback. Not a little bit. I'm actually a lot excited to hear about what your feedback is, Kristina, on the program. So we're going to get to that. But before we get to that, Noelle, I just want you to explain to us briefly, for those who aren't familiar with it, tell us about this nurse leadership program. What's this designed to do? How does it affect healthcare and nurse staffing and all that? Tell me about that.
So I designed the program specifically for nursing leaders and really looking at emerging leaders as well. Oftentimes you get a nurse coming in with amazing qualifications and clinical criteria that can really paint on a resume the potential to be an amazing leader, but oftentimes gets put into positions that they haven't quite been trained to understand what it takes to be a leader, the mechanisms behind being a leader, and how you can relate to staff. And after several years being in leadership and having a high retention rate overall with nurses, and then 100% retention rate with new grad nurses for 4 consecutive years, I said to myself, we've got to develop and find a way where we can teach these leaders how to find their core methods within themselves, identify them as a leader, and really have them emerge out into the workforce to be a supportive role model for their staff. So within, I almost say within a minute's time, because it went by so fast, I developed a 13-week course designed for nursing leaders to build their leadership skills at their core and teach them how to take those methods, bring them into your staff and retain, and also teach them the methods on how to retain staff as well. So, it was exciting, and it was kind of like an aha moment for me to have, but to actually take Kristina and the 5 others through the cohort, and we're nearly halfway through the first cohort right now. It's been pretty amazing, I think, on our end. Well, on my end, I should say.
I love it. This is great. Okay, so now that's what Noelle had in mind with the course. She put it out there, but Kristina, you're actually living it. You're actually going through it. So tell us, what's your perspective so far? What were you expecting, and then what has happened since it started?
Honestly, I didn't really know what to expect, so really weren't much. It wasn't really much of an expectation, but I've really enjoyed it. It's been just wonderful just to meet these other nurse leaders, across the country. And then also to, I love the model of how the cohort is, Noelle brings up a topic, explains something, and then it's just this open forum to hear everyone else's perspective, what works within their organization, what doesn't work. And so it's just really nice to have that, open conversation with the other nurse leaders. And, I'm a little bit different of a role from being in a staffing organization, and then also not being a manager myself. So I feel like I'm just learning, more from them then being able to really, give of my own perspective. But it's just been great to be able to just kind of soak it all in and then bring it back to really who my leader is within the organization. And so it's been a great learning experience.
That's great.
And I'd like to say, I'm going to interrupt you for a second, Rolfes, because your perspective has been so valuable, Kristina, because you're in a position where there's those that are within the hospital setting, and you have sort of a bird's eye view from a different perspective on the outside, that as a new nursing leader, a nurse manager coming in, they don't often get that piece of what recruitment looks like, whether they're traveler nurses coming in. It helps them understand and also work with and identify those nurses. And then we also have a nurse within the group that works in a private practice as well. So your feedback, I feel, has been very instrumental to the group in that they don't see the perspective that you see, and it actually helps when they look towards somebody like you and stat staff coming in, a better perspective of what they can do differently when they're hiring people in.
Well, thank you.
Give yourself a little bit more credit.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And it's great too, because of being on the outside, currently in my role, just to hear and understand what a nurse manager's perspective might be, because, we don't get, I don't get that. I just, kind of just see, what happens from the outside, but not really being able to give me the opportunity to understand why, hospitals function the way they function. And so, and obviously the facilities that we're in, nurse retention is something that is likely not working well, and that's why they need us in there for our help and our staff. But so it's it's still great. It's just great to hear, from those other leaders just how they work, or just trial and error, that things that maybe I think that should be done or are done and don't work. So. Yeah.
Now, I know this is, the way these cohorts are set up is where everyone can kind of share confidentially without it being put outside the group, which gives more freedom of speech, I think. But is there any key takeaways or things that you've learned from this, Kristina? Any one thought that you could share with us?
Regarding, sorry.
Just from being in the program so far, anything you've heard that you could share with us?
Oh, gotcha. The most recent cohort that we did last week was the main focus was on gratitude and the science behind it. And it's something that I've always heard, just certain things about, gratitude of you can't be, it's obviously it's just not what was said exactly, but taking it, out of context, but you can't be mad when you're grateful, to say it simply. And so, right. So it is just, but just to learn about the science behind it was just really interesting, because I never really thought about, what happens within the body, biologically when you have, when you practice gratitude, versus just knowing that it's just good for your soul kind of thing. So it was just a really, I just really enjoyed that session and hearing just, all about that course and what that doctor, what she has done to within her studies, and how she, all of the books that she's written and things like that, but just how it can be applied from a leadership perspective when you practice those things yourself, but then also try to, give those pointers to your team and to your nurses and your unit. And so it was just I really enjoy
it. What has surprised you about this, being in this? Any surprises you had in being involved with this program? And either one of you can speak on that.
Nothing comes to mind, so I'll get to you.
But you go for it, Noelle.
So I think, again, this goes back to being a nurse. We're so critical on ourselves. I think for me, what surprised me the most was how, or maybe it was more of like a validation than a surprise, but the fact that you've got 6 leaders from across the country that are all coming together to go through this program. And in the beginning, I was really hard on myself to make sure that I hit every key aspect and component of the program to meet the individual organizational needs. And I think that's where that surprised me the most, is that I actually, in some of these courses, I was right on point with certain, or because, you've got 3 or 4 different types of organizations that people work for in it. But what didn't surprise me was the fact that they all have these amazing conversations together and really have sort of formed their own little community, amongst leaders, looking at the aspects of what happens in California versus North Carolina and Kentucky and wherever everybody's from. So that part didn't surprise me that the nurses came together there. But I think what did surprise me is that I'm trying to be humble and not toot my own horn, but that we, for the most part, I hit the nail on the head in trying to really encompass each realm of where people are coming from. That was a very difficult piece for me. And I think their feedback has also been helpful of what to do, what can I change? Like, the feedback has been very transparent and open. At the end of each course, we talk about takeaways. And it's important that, whether it's one word or one sentence, I ask them what their takeaway was from that course. And that helps me decide for the next course, do I need to change anything right away or different, or are we all on the same path together?
Mm-hmm. Right. And you saw me wipe my eyes. Although I am emotional and happy about this, it was just because I have allergies today. But no, that's great. So when you were putting this program together, and I get it, you're not sure how it's going to land on them. You're not sure if it's going to be relevant to them. But the fact that it was relevant was validating, but kind of surprising to the point that it actually was landing well with them. Mm-hmm. Is that I'm hearing it? Am I hearing it right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And because the whole thought behind creating the program is to customize it to every organization, every nursing leader that's coming into it, and also have the ability to modify what we can do. So this group being the first cohort coming into it from 5 different organizations was exciting, but was also really overwhelming, because I was like, oh my gosh, am I having this all together? Is it all right? Yeah. When you're addressing one cohort with one organization, there's specific things that that you can work on and focus. And I think that was the great part that actually did surprise me, is that we all have this way of communicating and understanding that regardless of where you're from, typically the problems exist in different organizations, and we can get through them together. So no problem is unique, so to speak. And that it's sort of comforting knowing that everyone is going through the same type of situation, just different states, different cities, and this is how we can get through it.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. Yeah, sometimes we just feel like what we're going through is a unique experience to ourselves. We're doing it alone. But to be able to just kind of bounce it off some other peers and see that they're having the same struggles and issues, it has to be reassuring. What would you say about that, Kristina?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And even just how, things can be, it may not be a, something that needs to be approached that would fit in a box, like one size fits all, but how it really doesn't need to be, on this flip side, really doesn't have to be tweaked that much. It just really, so many things can apply to different organizations. And so it's been really, really enjoyable. And, the the only tough part, you mentioned it being a, just a private course, but it is recorded. So there's that pressure and of having to, knowing that you're recorded and being able to watch back, it's at the end of the day, and am I looking down a ton? Or I look like I'm falling asleep? And those that can't attend are going to have to watch this back. But
and we're all in the same boat at the end of the day.
So, are my kids interrupting me? But no, it's been really great. And I'm excited for the second half. And then also just to start, I know that it's going to start being certain things applied, within people's organizations. So I'm anxious to see just how those results, because it's nothing like mind shattering of like what needs to be done, of like something that you've never heard of. But that's the great thing about it, is it just makes so much sense, and of the things that need to be done or changes that need to be made. And so I feel like they are, simple enough where it should be able to be applied within an organization, and then hopefully see those results.
A follow-up question, Kristina, just from what you've seen so far, do you feel like the relevance here is very, very niche to where it's really only nurse leaders can gather from this, or do you think it's a little bit wider than that? I'm just curious, like, what is your thoughts? Should it continue to be something that is more focused on nurses, or is this something that should be expanded to other either disciplines or areas?
I think it's definitely applicable outside of the nursing profession. But the wonderful thing about the cohort is that we are, because we're all nurses and we all come from, similar aspects, whether, we're all on different levels in regards to leadership or type of organization, but we've all started from the same place. We've all gone through nursing school. We've all, have been a floor nurse at some point. So, we understand the steps of where, in regards to nursing retention, where, new nurses started and where they're currently at. And so I think overall it's very applicable, but I think it would be best to make sure that the team is not a mix of different professions. Cause I think that would be, so much of the cohort is being able to just, feed off of each other. So having the same profession, I think, would be important. If it was, I think it could be applied within business, but you need to have a business cohort.
So if she's going to do another different one, it needs to be, from your opinion, from your perspective, let's say if it was, I don't know, I'm just making something up, let's say lab techs or something. It would need to be a bunch of lab tech leaders.
Right. I think, because there's just different aspects that would, need to be tweaked. And so, so I think it would just be able to, just be able to feed off of each other, because other things are not as applicable within, cross specialties and stuff like that. Yeah.
Did you feel like when you came into this program that I already have something in common with these guys. I already feel a level of closeness, even though I haven't even interacted with them yet. Was that there because you had that same background?
100%. And I don't know if I've always feel that way with nurses. And, the first time that I came on your guys' show, I was really nervous about it. And then afterwards it was like, oh, it's just so easy, and natural. And that's how I felt with the cohort. It's just and I don't know if I'm a nurse, so I can only speak to nurses, but I'm sure it's that way in other, areas of life and specialties and different jobs and roles. But I just feel like in regards to nurses, like we just understand each other, you just get it. I don't know. It's just like it's that it factor. You just naturally can just easily strike up a conversation and just understand what the other's talking about.
And I'm happy to hear that too, because that's also part of the intention, right? You get a group of individuals together that are nurses, that it doesn't matter what part of nursing you're in, to create, and it goes back to me talking about like that community feel, because once the course is over, that's also, another part of the program is that they just don't graduate and disconnect. They have the opportunity, privately or together as a group, to continue this relationship through the website or, whether it's texting, email. The group has that opportunity to stay together. And I think that continuity of leadership and that continuity of connection is going to be really helpful, especially with this group that you've got people from across the country that are in it. And it's going to be valuable once we start looking at the tools and everybody starts going back to their organization to use them and look at how they're going to be able to retain. Because when we have like a reunion, ooh, that's a good one. We need to have a reunion.
Ooh, reunion. I like that.
I know. I just thought of that. When we have a reunion, it's going to touch back of like the celebratory moments of like, hey, my retention, or my turnover rates were 30% and now they're down to 15% in 6 months or however it may be.
Right.
That not only with the leaders too. So, yes, a reunion. That's exciting. So not only will we continue, we're going to have a reunion.
Yeah. And it'd also be interesting to see, from, whether it's 6 months from now or 12 months from now, to see what worked. But also in between that time to, if, anyone within the cohort needed to reach out to be, like, okay, it's something that even if you're convicted, it's you have to convince everyone else to be on that same page with you. Because, they're depending on the organization, it may, a larger organization, you might have to have more things approved versus, being able to just implement change, within your unit. So it'll be interesting to see how those changes are perceived, from within the organization, from other leaders and managers, and then as well as their unit.
Very cool. I'm really happy what you guys are doing with this. I'm glad you're involved too, Kristina. Would you is this something that you would recommend to someone who's only in leadership, who perhaps is more of kind of a different type of role that you're in? If they're an educator, like what types of nurse leaders, just from what you've seen so far, would you recommend getting involved with this program?
I think, being the focus, because the focus is nurse retention, I think it is, you're going to be able to take the most from it, and be able to see the most improvement if there's that need, if there is that, need for change and improvement within, retention within your organization. I don't think that it really matters what type of organization it is within nursing. But I personally feel like I'm growing and getting a lot out of this. But from the retention standpoint, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to apply, because it's such a unique, role that I'm in and our type of organization. So that aspect, I won't be able to compare to the other nurses within the cohort. But so that would be my only, thing would be, as far as who would be benefit the most from it would be likely those that need to see improvement within the organization.
Got it. Okay. So this is really good feedback here. So folks, we're getting live feedback from someone who's going to it, and she's giving us kind of her perspective and her pointers. This is all helpful. So I hope you're okay with that, Noelle. We're getting this feedback live.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Also, you know what? You can only improve and get better at, anything you're doing by getting feedback and hearing what others have to say. And it's like I said, I take everything that they say during each cohort to heart, because it's so important to hear what's really retaining, how much are they taking in, and for Kristina to talk about the fact that she herself as a leader is growing through this is remarkable, regardless of whether you have the retention piece put towards the end of it. So that speaks volume as a nurse and as an emerging leader, what's working.
That's awesome. So what as far as what would you like to add, or what component or thing you would like to see done on either the second half of this cohort or the next cohort? Anything that comes to mind with that?
Honestly, nothing really comes to mind. I think honestly, the hour goes by really fast, and honestly, like it would sometimes you're just like, oh, you just wish it went just like a little bit longer just to cover it, although like my family's like starving in the background and needs me to get dinner going. Like but I just really, there sometimes it just feels like we could just really just go on for a very long time talking about it. So maybe it's a good thing that it cuts short. But that, that's honestly really it. You just feel like, wow, it's all of a sudden it's just over. And there's just so much more that we could talk about. And then you get to the next week and it's a new topic. So I don't know, like maybe I don't know how the others would feel, but maybe if there was a part of the website that the course is on, to like have a board to like be able to add feedback, like to add different points if something comes to mind, or if you miss a course and weren't able to participate in the actual live meeting, of being able to give your perspective, maybe being able to just kind of put that out there.
I love that.
So
almost like a blog within the
right,
website.
blog,
That would be awesome.
Applause, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
I love that idea. That's such a great idea, because there are a few that have missed certain weeks and they rewatch it and they see it, but you don't have that opportunity then to engage. And
right.
this give you that opportunity to engage before the next week comes.
Right. Yeah. I sound like myself, like talking to myself, and it was like, oh, like no one hears me, This is like a recording. So yeah.
I love that.
So no, that's a great point. I love it, to be able to give that feedback after the fact. So I want to go back to something you said earlier. You talked about pressure, right? The pressure of recording. But at the same time, you like the availability that you can watch it in case you miss it, or if you want to review it.
Right. Yeah.
But there is a certain amount of pressure with recording. So tell me about that. It's just a small group. It's only like 5 or 6 for the next 13 weeks. 5 or 6 of your closest friends here, right?
Yeah.
That are watching this. Tell me about that pressure. What goes through your mind? Because I think other people are feeling the same thing. I don't think you're the only one.
Well, Noelle and I are really the only ones that are working from home. So, they've already like in a workplace, like around, so it's just everyone, and they honestly are joining in from their offices, because people are in different time zones. So for me, it's honestly just related to working from home and finishing up my things. And, you put a camera on, you're like, oh my gosh, like that is, all these like flyaways and things so it's all in vain. I mean, it's really just, my vanity. That's really the only reason, of like, oh my gosh, like there was one where I was like, you know what, I'm just not going to share my camera. And then towards the end, I was like, oh, they don't like it. It's like either it's like forgotten that I'm there, or they don't realize that I joined late, or so then I just end up sharing my camera as terrible.
I think I might have actually said something too.
Because I had worked out and during a lunch break and never got to, to change. So it was wild and free.
But you know what? This is life. This is reality, and it's okay.
Right.
Yes, I think I remember saying something. I'm like, "Hi, Kristina, are you here?"
I think you're here. And so I like wrote in the chat, like, I'm just not going to share my camera. And then no one said anything. So I guess I'm sharing my camera.
We get
But
it.
I mean, I guess it has to feel a little bit less pressure though. That it's just the cohort.
Oh yeah.
Watching, right?
Well, I don't know. It's also the first though, so I don't know if like I want Noelle to be able to like use a clip in like a future a cohort. So you don't know what it's going to be used for because it's a recording. So it's
yes. I can appreciate that. I can understand that.
Yeah,
Okay, so I think I saw that. I think I saw that Denise is coming in. So are we starting our second half? And Kristina, you're welcome to stay if you want, or go, or whatever your thought. Noelle is inviting me to stay. I guess I can stay for a little bit. What are your thoughts? Up to you. Totally up to you.
I can stay a little bit longer. So I can just about it.
So let's see. I saw her trying to come in, and I don't know if was that me who's supposed to be invited. Supposed to be admitting her. Let's see here. Let's see if we can get her in here. I don't know if you can see that from your end, Jonathan. Okay. All right. You're not the co-host. So this is live, guys. So this is what it's all about. Let me see. Let me make sure that you are a co-host. So when you see her come in. Yeah, so when you see her come in again, and Joanne, maybe you can communicate back out to Denise and ask her to come back. She sat there for a while, and I didn't. You guys were on a roll. I didn't want to disturb you, so. So
that's
anyway.
okay.
All right. So
see if I can get her on.
One of the things that I wanted to do before she comes in, and I want to just kind of talk about for a second is, and I've been talking about this on my other shows too. We say sorry a lot when it's on these Zooms, because like hey, sorry, that's the dog, or sorry, that's the guy mowing outside, or sorry, it's my kid right there. I tried it for the first time today. I just came on and I was just in it, and I didn't say sorry. I just like got in the meeting. That way, we didn't have to spend like even 30 seconds talking about my issue, whatever it was. I wanted to get y'all's opinion. What are your thoughts? Do you feel like you still feel this this obligation to explain that when something happens? Because it happens to I know anybody who watches can relate to this.
Mm-hmm. I think it has become a habit, and people just fall about it in reality. And if we're that person hearing somebody say sorry, in all reality, no one cares. Mm-hmm. And when it's ourselves too, we feel the same way. We're like, sorry, sorry, sorry. But if I was the person on the other end, so what? But it's amazing how we all have that same perspective on both sides, but yet we still think and do that way.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. The same thing is when you hear, and I guess it's that perspective of when you are, in public and you see somebody else's kid misbehave, you honestly can't help but laugh. Like, it's honestly like amusing to watch other kids misbehave, but when it's your own, it's like it's completely different, that there's another mom that's probably, laughing at me, or my child. So I think it's that, it's just like, you can't help but, if in the moment you just, something, because you're in it, it's not outside looking in. It's everything's always hindsight.
Yeah, I think you can go either way with it, but I really do think that we abuse the word sorry because it almost becomes meaningless.
Yeah, I mean, literally, it's pretty much. I gotta watch that. I say literally a lot, but there are a lot of times, even throughout the day, if I have 3 or 4 or 5 Zoom meetings that are set up, I can guarantee you one of us is going to say, "Oh, sorry," and then whatever, you fill in the blank after that. So I'm just curious, because we're already a year into this thing. So I was just curious if that's really necessary anymore.
Mm-hmm. I think the most common within our my daily Zoom meetings, the sorry was always related to talking over each other, because the delay some days is not bad and other days it's really bad, and there's nothing you can do about it, and so that's likely the common thing that somebody would apologize for, and
that's a good point.
But it's not, I don't think that's an instance where you understand it, but I think still it's appropriate.
Yeah,
that's a really good point.
So Denise, she's putting in the comments here that she's here, but she wasn't able to get in. So Denise, I actually saw you coming in. I just wasn't able to click admit at that moment, because if I would have clicked admit, you would have literally just popped on the screen while we were talking. So if you can try again, because you were in the right place, just go ahead